I think the Mikko Rantanen stuff, we talked about it over the weekend. Rantanen traded to Carolina. I'm sure, Sean, you've seen some of the reaction where I saw the reporting that said Rantanen was completely caught off guard and said he was willing. He told several writers that he was willing to take significantly below his market value to re-sign with Colorado, and he was completely shocked they traded him.
This is the post divorce, everyone telling their side of the story. Just call it what it is. Like, I'm sure Rantanen was willing to take some money under the level of it, but clearly not to a level that was one where he would have stayed in Colorado. So the whole thing where he was completely shocked and he was this good, and he was this person who was willing to live in the poorhouse to stay in Colorado. It's a pretty funny narrative that's being pushed right now. I believe that he was willing to take a little bit, but is a little bit less, being $500,000 less. Like that to like under market value is both sides are trying to make themselves look good at the end of a deal after a divorce.
Yeah, it depends on what you mean by under market value.
Yes.
You know what I mean? Because when he's going to sign his next deal, the salary cap is going to be different. They're worried about MacKinnon, but and I think MacKinnon's taken, 15% of the cap currently. So Rantanen can take a couple percent or whatever less than that and still be making more than MacKinnon. So if you want to look at it, he's really not trying to say he's over that. But Sean, I'm curious, did you happen to hear the interviews between the head coach and I think it was MacKinnon after the Boston game, their reaction to the trade?
Yeah, how McKinnon's was how, like he said, never in a million years did he think that Rantanen wouldn't be a member of the Avalanche and everything like that. And so that to me is that's a fascinating dynamic to see how that all plays out. I had something that somebody pointed out to me who happens to be an Avalanche fan. They asked me if I had told you that the last game Gabriel Landeskog, Nathan MacKinnon, and Mikko Rantanen would all play together was like when they were passing the cup around, that they would never play another game together, would you have believed me? And that's kind of a crazy thought for me. Obviously, Landeskog missed all of last season, and we never know. But like, you think about that, right? Where that was the final moment for that trio that now is effectively over. So that was those players in that room, and I know some people who cover that team and everything like that. They were pretty sideswiped by it. I don't think Rantanen. Here's what we'll go with this. Rantanen's agent is the one who depends on how much Mikko wants his agent to tell him back and forth, because this is also something from a Stars perspective, because everything connects to the Stars, and I'm drawing a complete blank on their name right now, but Rantanen's agent is also Leon Draisaitl's agent, who is also Thomas Harley's agent. So everything connects back to the Stars in some way. And so how do they operate? Also, Wyatt Johnston's agent too, by the way, if you wanted to even more connections on how all of this goes. How Rantanen was told and whether Rantanen wanted to hear about the inner workings of it all, that's the answer I would really like some truth serum on, of how surprised he was, because there's no way the agent was surprised.
I'm trying to pull it up really fast here because you got me curious on it now. Andy Scott is the agent for Thomas Harley.
Yep.
Yesterday, Winnipeg won, Colorado won, and Minnesota won. The three teams that I think are the ones you have to keep an eye on in the Central Division, battling for position with Dallas. Look, one day to the next, those things are going to happen, whatever. But after a shakeup, Nate just played pretty well on Sunday for Colorado. Rantanen, the old line, Luds, is that whoever gets the best player in the trade wins the trade, even if the other one is value. Rantanen is the best player in that trade. Now, Martin Necas is a fantastic player. He has term, and he's going to be good with the high-flying Colorado scheme because that's what Carolina does. They play a very aggressive style. But Mikko Rantanen is a different element altogether.
I'm baffled by it. Even when it happened, I'm like, I didn't think it was real either, and that's just respect for the player. But he hasn't signed it either. So I mean, they've got to find a way to sign him in Carolina, and I'm just the whole Chicago end of the thing. I do think Taylor Hall going to Carolina is going to help him. I think I think Rod Brendamore is going to like that guy. I mean, the way he skates, and that's kind of their game. So we'll see. I mean, probably going to be third line guy, but regardless,
What a difference to go from the current state of the Blackhawks,
yeah,
to Carolina as far as like prospects of winning.
Well, that's why when the Blackhawk thing, I don't understand the whole thing. I mean, but I just wonder because Rantanen's got to be signed by somebody at the end of this year. And I know that Aho, and it sounds like they're really good friends. And so that might be a relationship that they have there. But wouldn't it be something if Rantanen and Bedard were teammates?
That's interesting.
I mean, if they got a ton of money. But regardless, I just worry. Now I don't want to worry about anybody, but I go back to the interviews I listened to, and it truly sounded like MacKinnon and Bednar, the head coach, were caught off guard. And maybe the coach made it sound like that. I'm just curious that it doesn't get run through at least the head coach from what Joe Sakic is doing. And maybe that did, and he played it like I didn't know anything. But even MacKinnon, and I've always been a guy where, if you're a GM, you have to have good relationships with, not as much as a coach does, but you have relationships with your players and especially your top players. And I just wondered, MacKinnon being caught off guard. I don't know if that upsets a player. I don't know if it upsets a coach or it's just doing business. But, they're two dominant people in the sport and one Stanley Cup for your organization. I would think you would run some of that through those guys or buy them.
Yeah. The thing for me that I just kind of struggle with right here is even if you were going to let him walk and let Rantanen walk in the summer, isn't your chance like make him your rental, right? Like make him your piece where it's like, we're going to try to win one more cup with these guys. And you know what? Winning a Stanley Cup there, that just maybe that like that part to me is the whole Colorado thing that is the most I get where it's like, oh, you got to recoup something. But we talk about windows in Dallas. You talk about winning Stanley Cups. You talk about guys going after rentals. It wouldn't Mikko Rantanen keeping him been the best rental possible?
Exactly. I mean, where are you going to find a better? And Nation's, like you said, he's a good player, right? He's fast and he transports the puck up ice. He flies. He's a right shot. I think he is. He's probably does he a 30-goal guy? I'm guessing he's probably 30, 40. I mean, with playing with them guys, he will. But isn't he kind of? Well, this isn't fair to say. I was just going to say, isn't he kind of like MacKinnon? He's not. But where do you use him now? Like Rantanen, to me, as a lefty, there was always that threat of the MacKinnon back to Rantanen, MacKinnon, and Rantanen could finish. And he has a nickname Moose for a reason. I mean, he plants himself in front of the net. Now, Natchez has probably got a pretty good deal. I mean, it's $5 million, $6 million. I don't know.
6.5.
And is he going to be up in a year? I think it's a year. They said he's got to have a contract doing a year or a year and a half or something like that.
I believe he has another year after this year. So,
well, how do you play that guy on that power? Is he going to take Rantanen's place? They're both righties.
And Natchez is also, to me, this is the other thing that doesn't make as much sense. Is one of the reasons Rantanen works so well with that's on that power play, right? It was I remember being at a game in Denver earlier this season, and you go through and you watch that power play. I was sitting with someone behind the goal area, and you watch MacKinnon, Makar, and Rantanen. You watch them zing that thing around, that 3-man unit on the power play. You watch the way it's impressive. Natchez is a shooter, and now we talked before. Like he's a shooter. He's a guy who gets the puck and fires on the rush and joins the play and coming and so I'm not saying he can't play with MacKinnon. I believe Nathan MacKinnon can play with anyone, but in zone, what does Nathan MacKinnon mean? Nathan MacKinnon, like Jonathan Drouin's not going to go clean up guys around the crease. Natchez isn't going to go clean up guys around the crease. Now this puts more on MacKinnon to be the bull by himself when before he had Rantanen there. Like Colorado.
It doesn't to find a trio like that, like you talked about, that can do those kind of things, and then take one of those. I mean, Dallas has got one, right? I mean, when we see Rupe and Duchesne and Robo and Harley zing the puck around and shoot the puck at the net and score goals, but it's hard to develop that chemistry between three guys, and then you've got three superstar guys that. Every time a penalty killing unit goes out there against them, and especially going into a game, and you know how good those guys are, you're like, we got to stay out of the box. We can't, don't give them that opportunity. And now I don't know. I don't know. I just wonder if there's a different play going on here.
You brought up Val Nichushkin's name.
Yeah, I
when
said
we were
I
talking
think-
about it over the weekend.
But Val's not him. Like that can move the puck around. Like Val is that house that sets up in front of the net. You can't move him. And he's tough along the wall. I just think that Rantanen's more of a playmaker than Val is, especially with McKinnon. I think those guys were dialed in on the same page, so to speak.
Sean, they opened up some cap space. I know they have the Landeskog LTIR. Seems like Colorado's not done here.
Yeah, I mean, I think if you're Colorado, you owe it to, especially that room, like Lutz talked about the reaction. Like, if I'm management in Colorado, I'm having a conversation with Bednar and McKinnon in my leadership there of like, hey, we do it. We don't worry, we're going to do something else, because I feel like we talked about the Stars owing it to Ben, to the Jamie Benn window and everything to go and do something. Like, if you're Colorado, if you're going to open up that space and you're going to give away a guy who was a leader and a cultural touch point for that room, let's call him what he was, you got to do something, right? So you have to do something else. And so I don't know where and what Colorado is going to do, but all of it is going to feel, though, to me, there's no realistic move, and I'm using the word realistic because I know there's a ridiculous other thing that's being thrown out about what could be happening, but there's no realistic move.
You're talking about 87, aren't you?
Yes. And I'm like, there's no realistic move that brings you to that lineup what Mikko Rantanen had.
It just seems like if you're those guys that and you mentioned Makar and McKinnon,
yeah,
like you ripped away an opportunity for us to win a Stanley. You didn't rip it away, but
you made it much harder. You made it a lot harder.
So I'm going to bring it up real quick, even though it's kind of a conspiracy theory here. But Luds, Sean's referring to the idea that they partially made this move because
I know you want to put the
Sidney
two guys
Crosby from Nova Scotia
I know. Put the two guys
is going to go to Colorado and play out the end of his.
God bless
McKinnon.
Crosby. He's not Rantanen. I'm sorry, he's not. He but he's not anymore.
And also, how many times does Sidney Crosby have to say, "I want to finish my career in Pittsburgh"?
Yeah, exactly.
Like how many times does Sidney Crosby have to say that for people to believe it? Right? Like, there's the whole. I mean, Sidney Crosby but he is side by side compared to Mario. Mario never played for another team. There's the only way that Sidney Crosby doesn't play for the Penguins is the same way that Mike Modano didn't play for the Stars for a season, where it's the end and a GM makes a tough choice that, you know what, he's not an impact player anymore. Sidney Crosby is still an impact player. He's not Rantanen right now, but he's still an impact player. And I don't know how many times that guy can say, I'm never going to play for another team.